stood alone in the great hall of the palace. The ceiling stretched so high above him that he could barely see where it ended. Everything was made of dark stone and silver metal. Strange lights floated in the air without any wires or glass to hold them. They were an old species. They had traveled between stars when humans were still learning to make fire. He was wearing his best military uniform. It was clean and pressed, with 3 medals on his chest. Back on Earth, those medals meant something. Here among he was nothing, just a human, just a small, weak creature from a young planet. The doors at the far end of the hall opened, straightened his back and lifted his chin. He had faced death many times in battle. He could face this too. A group walked toward him. They were tall, almost 8 feet, with skin the color of pale blue ice. Their eyes were large and silver, like mirrors that showed nothing inside. They moved with a grace that made feel clumsy just standing still. In the center of the group walked a female. She was different from the others. Her skin had a slight purple tint, and her silver eyes held flecks of gold. She wore a dress made of something that looked like liquid starlight. It moved and shifted as she walked, never quite staying the same shape. This was Princess of the Empire, daughter of Emperor, and in less than 1 hour she would be his wife. Did not want this marriage. He knew she did not want it either, but neither of them had a choice. This was politics. This was survival. 3 years ago, humans had made first contact with It had not gone well. There had been misunderstandings, then fear, then violence. A small war had erupted at the edge of space. Thousands had died on both sides. The war ended when both sides realized they could not win. They were older and more advanced, but humans bred fast and fought with a madness they could not understand. A peace treaty was needed, and to seal that treaty, a marriage was arranged. Had been chosen because he was a soldier who had fought in that war. He had no family left to miss him. He was young enough to live for many years among and he had volunteered. He had volunteered because he believed in peace. He had seen too much death. If his life could prevent more war, then it was a price worth paying. Stopped a few feet away from him. She looked down at him with those strange silver and gold eyes. Her face showed no emotion. It was like looking at a beautiful statue carved from ice. "So," she said, her voice was cold and musical at the same time, "this is the human." One of the beside her leaned close and whispered something, caught a few words, small and fragile and short-lived. His lips curved into something that was not quite a smile. "I am told humans live for less than 100 years. Is this true?" Nodded, "If we are lucky." "They live for 1,000 years, said. "You will be dead before I reach middle age. This marriage is an insult wrapped in pretty words about peace." Felt anger rise in his chest, but he pushed it down. He had expected this. The thought of humans the way humans thought of insects, small, simple, unimportant. "I did not ask for this marriage," said. His voice was calm and steady. "But I accepted it because I want peace between our peoples. I have seen war. I do not want to see more." Studied him for a long moment. Something flickered in her eyes. Surprise, maybe, or curiosity. "You speak well for a creature with such a small brain," she said. Almost laughed. "Almost. I have heard that are wise and graceful. I see now that they are also very skilled at insults." A sound came from the around. It might have been shock. One of them stepped forward with an angry look on his face, but raised her hand to stop him. "He has spirit," said. "Good, spirit will help him survive here, for a little while at least." The ceremony took place an hour later in a great temple filled with floating lights and strange music. Understood almost nothing of what was happening. Words were spoken in the language. Objects were exchanged. At one point, he had to drink something that tasted like liquid metal. When it was over, turned to him and spoke the only words of the ceremony that were in his language. "We are bound now," she said, "until death breaks the chain." Looked up at her. She was so tall that his head barely reached her shoulder. He was her husband now, but he had never felt smaller in his life. That night was taken to the rooms he would share with. They were beautiful rooms, filled with strange art and soft furniture, but they felt cold and empty. Was already there when he arrived. She stood by a window that looked out over the alien city below. The buildings stretched toward the sky like silver needles. "You will sleep in the small room," said without turning around. "I do not want you near me." Nodded even though she could not see it. "As you wish." He started walking toward the door she had pointed to, but her voice stopped him. "Why did you volunteer for this?" Turned back, was still looking out the window, but he could see her reflection in the glass. She looked almost curious. "Because someone had to," said, "and I had nothing left to lose." Finally turned to look at him. "Nothing, no family, no lover, no home you wish to return to." "My family died in the war," said. The words came out flat and empty. "My home was destroyed. Everyone I loved is gone." For a moment something changed in his eyes. The coldness melted just a little, but then it was back, hard as stone. "So you came here to die slowly instead of quickly," she said. "How very human." Shook his head. "I came here to make sure no other family has to die, no other home has to burn. If I can do that, then my life has meaning." Stared at him for a long moment, then she turned back to the window. "Go to your room, human. I am tired of talking." Went. The small room was actually quite large by human standards. It had a bed that was too big for him and furniture that was too tall. Everything was designed for bodies, not human ones. He sat on the edge of the bed and looked at his hands. They were shaking slightly. The stress of the day was finally hitting him. He was married now, married to an alien princess who hated him, living on an alien world where everyone thought he was less than nothing. He would probably spend the rest of his short life here, alone and despised. But he had done the right thing. He had to believe that. The next few weeks were difficult. Was given a schedule of things he was supposed to do, meetings with officials who barely looked at him, dinners where he sat at the end of the table like an afterthought, ceremonies where he stood in the corner and tried not to embarrass anyone. Barely spoke to him. When they were in public, she treated him with cold politeness. When they were alone, she ignored him completely. Spent most of his time learning. He studied the language until he could understand most conversations. He read about their history and their customs. He watched and listened and tried to figure out how to survive in this strange new world. One day, about a month after the wedding, was walking through the palace gardens when he heard voices. He stopped behind a tall hedge and listened. "The human is still alive," someone said. The voice was male and filled with contempt. "Unfortunately, yes," another voice replied. "He follows the princess around like a lost pet. It is embarrassing. The princess must hate this situation, being tied to such a creature." "She does. She told me she cannot even look at him without feeling sick. He is so small and ugly, and he smells wrong." Felt his face grow hot. He had known the look down on him, but hearing it spoken so openly still hurt. "Why did the emperor agree to this marriage?" the first voice asked. "Politics," the second voice said. "The humans are not strong, but there are many of them. They breed like insects. Better to have peace than to waste resources fighting them." But to give them a princess, surely there was another way. The humans demanded a royal marriage. They are a proud species, even if they have nothing to be proud of. Had heard enough. He turned and walked away, his hands clenched into fists at his sides. That night, he did something he had not done since arriving on this world. He went to the training room in the basement of the palace. The room was empty at this late hour. Found a practice sword and began to move through the combat forms he had learned in the military. His body remembered the movements even though his mind was full of anger and hurt. He trained for hours. He pushed his body until his muscles burned and sweat dripped down his face. He fought invisible enemies until he could barely lift his arms. When he finally stopped, he was not alone. Stood in the doorway, watching him with an unreadable expression on her face. "You fight well," she said, "for a human." Was too tired to be polite. "Thank you," for that almost sounded like a compliment. His eyes narrowed. For a moment, thought she would be angry, but then her lips twitched in what might have been amusement. "You have fire in you, little human," she said. "I did not expect that." She turned and walked away before could respond. He stood there in the empty training room, breathing hard and wondering what had just happened. For the first time since arriving on this world, someone had looked at him and seen something other than weakness. It was a small thing, but somehow it felt like a beginning. 3 months passed after the wedding, fell into a routine. He woke early, trained alone in the basement, attended whatever meetings or ceremonies he was required to attend, and then returned to his small room to study. He and still barely spoke, but something had changed since that night in the training room. She no longer looked at him with pure disgust. Now there was something else in her eyes, curiosity maybe, or confusion. Sometimes caught her watching him during meals. When he looked back, she would turn away quickly, as if she had been doing nothing at all. He did not know what to make of it, so he focused on what he could control. He trained harder. He studied more. He learned everything he could about thee and their ways. Then the news came. Was eating breakfast alone in the small dining room attached to his quarters when a servant rushed in. The servant was young and clearly nervous. "Sir, you are summoned to the War Council," the servant said. "The Emperor himself has called the meeting." Set down his food. "The War Council, why would I be summoned there?" "I do not know, sir, but you must come immediately." Followed the servant through the winding halls of the palace. His mind was racing. A war council meant conflict. Had something happened with Earth? Had the peace treaty failed? The council chamber was a large circular room with a glowing table in the center. Around the table stood the highest-ranking military officers of the empire. At the head of the table sat Emperor himself. The Emperor was old, even by standards. His skin was darker than the others, closer to purple than blue. His silver eyes were sharp and cold. He looked at the way a hawk might look at a mouse. Stood beside her father. She glanced at when he entered, but her face showed nothing. "The human has arrived," one of the generals said. His voice dripped with contempt. "Good," the Emperor said. "Let him hear what his people have done." Stepped forward. "What has happened?" The Emperor waved his hand, and the table lit up with a holographic map. Recognized the region. It was the border zone between space and human territory. 3 days ago, a fleet of ships attacked one of our border stations, the Emperor said. The ships were human. Felt his blood go cold. That is impossible. The Earth government would never break the treaty. And yet human ships were seen, a general said. Human weapons were used, 20 died. I do not believe it, said. There must be a mistake, pirates perhaps, or someone trying to start a war between our peoples. Or perhaps humans simply cannot be trusted, another general said. The room erupted in argument. Some called for immediate war against humanity. Others argued for investigation first. The Emperor sat silent through it all, watching and listening. Finally, the Emperor raised his hand for silence. We will send a fleet to investigate, he said. If this was an attack by Earth, we will respond. If it was something else, we will find out what. He turned his cold eyes to. You will remain here, human. Consider yourself a guest until we determine if your people have betrayed us. The word guest was a lie, understood what it really meant. He was a hostage now. If Earth had truly broken the treaty, he would be the first to die. The next few days were tense. Was not locked in his room, but guards followed him everywhere. The who had ignored him before now glared at him with open hatred. He spent most of his time in the training room, pushing his body to its limits. It was the only way to keep his mind from spiraling into fear and anger. Found him there on the third night. "You train a lot," she said from the doorway. Did not stop his movements. He was practicing with 2 short swords, spinning and striking at invisible enemies. "It helps me think," he said. "What are you thinking about?" "Whether I am going to die for something I did not do." Walked into the room. She moved to a rack of weapons on the wall and picked up a long, thin blade. "Show me," she said. Stopped and looked at her. "Show you what?" "How humans fight. I have seen recordings of your wars, but recordings are not the same as seeing it in person." Hesitated, then he nodded and raised his swords. They circled each other slowly, was taller and had longer reach. Her blade was designed for precise, elegant strikes. Swords were shorter but faster. She attacked first. Her blade cut through the air like lightning, barely managed to dodge, spinning to the side and slashing at her arm. She pulled back just in time. Her eyes widened slightly. "You are faster than I expected," she said. "Humans are not as slow as you think." They fought for several minutes, was better trained and stronger, but was quick and unpredictable. He used tricks that the fighting style did not account for. He kicked at her legs. He threw one of his swords at her face. He rolled on the ground and attacked from below. In the end, won. Her blade stopped a hair's width from his throat. But she was breathing hard, and there was sweat on her pale blue skin. "You fight dirty," she said. Smiled despite himself. "Humans cannot afford to fight clean. We are smaller and weaker than almost everything in the galaxy. If we fought fair, we would already be dead." Lowered her blade. She looked at him with an expression he could not read. "Maybe that is why my people fear yours," she said quietly. "Not because you are strong, but because you refuse to give up." Before could respond, alarms began to scream throughout the palace. Red lights flashed, voices shouted in the language, caught fragments of words. "Attack ships, enemy." His face went pale. "The border station, they are attacking again." They ran together through the halls to the command center. The room was chaos. Officers were shouting orders. The holographic table showed dozens of red dots surrounding a position. Reports demanded. "A large fleet appeared out of nowhere," an officer said. "They hit our patrol ships first, then moved to attack the station directly. We are sending reinforcements, but they are 3 hours away." "How many enemies?" "At least 50 ships, maybe more." Studied the display. Something was wrong. The attack pattern was not random, it was surgical, precise. "These are not human tactics," he said. Everyone in the room turned to look at him with hostile eyes. "What would you know about it?" a general demanded. "I was a soldier," said. "I studied fleet combat. Human tactics are aggressive and direct. We rush in and overwhelm with numbers. This attack is different. It is careful, methodical, like they are testing your defenses." "He is trying to confuse us," someone said. "Protect his own people." "If these were human ships, I would admit it," said. "I have no reason to lie. Look at the formation. Look at how they move. This is not how humans fight." The Emperor had entered the room without anyone noticing. His voice cut through the argument. "The human speaks truth," he said. "I have studied human warfare. This is something else." The room fell silent. "Then who attacks us?" a general asked. "I do not know," the Emperor said, "but we will find out. Send every ship we can spare. I want prisoners. I want answers." The fleet was assembled within hours. Watched from a window as hundreds of warships rose into the sky and disappeared into the darkness of space. 3 days later, the fleet returned with news that changed everything. The attackers were not human. They were a species called the. They were ancient enemies of the, thought to have died out centuries ago. They had returned in secret, building their strength in the dark spaces between stars. The human ships had been stolen. The weapons had been. It was all designed to start a war between humans and, while the two species fought each other, they would grow stronger. "We have a common enemy now," the Emperor said to the council. "They will not stop with border attacks. They will come for our worlds, for our people." He looked at, "I was wrong to suspect your people. The treaty stands. More than that, we must fight together if we are to survive." Felt relief wash through him, but it was quickly replaced by something else: determination. "Let me fight," he said. The council stared at him. "I am a soldier," continued. "I have combat experience. I want to help defend against the—" A general laughed. "You, a human, you would die in the first battle." "Maybe," said, "but I would rather die fighting than hide here doing nothing." Spoke before anyone else could respond. "Let him go." Everyone turned to look at her. "He is my husband," she said. Her voice was cold but caught something else beneath it. "If he wishes to throw his life away, that is his choice." The Emperor considered for a long moment. Then he nodded. "Very well. The human will join the defense force. Put him with the front-line units." The generals looked pleased by this. Front-line units had the highest death rates. They expected to die quickly. Did not care. He finally had a purpose again. That night, as he packed his few belongings, came to his room. "You are a fool," she said. Did not look up from his packing, probably. "They are dangerous. They destroyed civilizations when my ancestors were young. You have no idea what you are walking into." "Then tell me." Was silent for a moment. Then she sat down on the edge of his bed. "They are hunters," she said. "They do not fight for territory or resources. They fight because they enjoy it. They keep the strongest enemies alive so they can fight them again. They break their victims slowly over years until there is nothing left." Finally looked at her. Her face was serious, almost concerned. "Why are you telling me this?" "Because you should know what kind of death you are choosing." Smiled. It was a tired smile, but real. "I have faced death before. I am not afraid of it." "Then you are either very brave or very stupid." "Probably both." Stood up, she walked to the door, then stopped and looked back at him. "Try not to die too quickly, little human. It would be embarrassing to be a widow so soon." She left before could respond. The next morning, boarded a transport ship with hundreds of soldiers. They looked at him with confusion and contempt. A human joining their ranks was unheard of. But did not care what they thought. He had made his choice. He would fight, he would prove himself, or he would die trying. As the ship lifted off and the planet grew small beneath them, looked out the window at the stars. Somewhere out there, enemies were waiting. Battles were coming. He did not know that these battles would change him forever. He did not know that he would become something more than human, something the galaxy had never seen before. All he knew was that he was finally doing what he was born to do. He was going to war. The first battle came 3 weeks after arrived at the front lines. He was stationed on a moon called, a rocky wasteland that served as a forward base for forces. They came at night. Their ships were black and silent, sliding through space like shadows. By the time the alarm sounded, they were already landing troops. Grabbed his weapons and ran to his position with the other soldiers. The around him moved with practiced efficiency. They had been fighting for centuries. War was in their blood. He saw them for the first time as they charged across the rocky ground. They were nightmares made flesh. Their bodies were covered in dark scales that seemed to absorb light. They had 4 arms, each ending in claws like curved knives. Their faces were flat and eyeless, but somehow they could see better than any other species in the galaxy. They screamed as they attacked. It was not a sound that came from any throat. It was something deeper, something that vibrated in the bones. Many young soldiers froze when they heard it. Did not freeze. He raised his rifle and fired. The battle lasted 6 hours. When it was over, the ground was covered with bodies from both sides. They retreated back to their ships and disappeared into the darkness. Was wounded. A claw had torn through his armor and cut deep into his side. Blood soaked his uniform, but he was alive. The medics were surprised. They had expected the human to die in the first charge. Instead, he had killed 7 by himself. "You fight like something wild," one of the medics said as she treated his wound. "Like you have nothing to lose." "I do not," said. Word spread through the base. The human had survived. More than survived, he had fought like a demon. The soldiers who had ignored him before began to nod at him in the hallways. It was not friendship, not yet, but it was respect, a small amount, hard one. Over the next 2 months there were more battles. They attacked again and again, testing the defenses. Each time they were pushed back. Each time they learned more about their enemy's weaknesses. Fought in every battle. He was wounded 3 more times. Each time he refused to stay in the medical bay longer than necessary. Each time he returned to the front lines. They began to call him something in their language. Asked one of the younger soldiers what it meant. "It means stubborn ghost," the soldier said, "because you should be dead but you keep coming back." Laughed, it was a good name. Then came the battle that changed everything. They launched their largest attack yet. Thousands of troops, dozens of ships. They hit the base from 3 directions at once. Was on the eastern wall when it fell. A bomb tore through the defenses and sent soldiers flying. When pulled himself out of the rubble, he found that he was alone. The other soldiers were dead or wounded too badly to move. They were pouring through the breach in the wall. Behind them, could see the main base where the wounded and the command staff were located. If they reached the base, everyone would die. Did not think, he did not plan, he simply moved. He picked up a fallen sword in one hand and a broken piece of metal in the other. He walked toward the breach. The first that came through did not see him until the sword was already in its chest, pulled the blade free and moved to the next enemy. He fought like nothing they had ever seen. He was not elegant like the. He was not powerful like the themselves. He was something else entirely. He was a creature of pure will, refusing to fall no matter how many wounds he took. They kept coming, kept fighting. His sword broke. He grabbed another from a dead soldier. That one broke too. He used his fists. He used his teeth. He used anything he could find. Blood covered him from head to toe. Most of it was not his own. Time lost all meaning. There was only the next enemy, the next strike, the next breath. And then suddenly, there were no more enemies. Stood in the breach, surrounded by bodies. He was barely standing. His legs shook. His vision was blurry. He had wounds on every part of his body. But they had stopped coming through. He could hear sounds of battle elsewhere, but here at the breach, there was only silence. Then he heard a voice. It was not a voice that came through his ears. It was a voice that appeared directly in his mind. It was deep and old and filled with something that felt like fire. "Interesting," the voice said. "Very interesting." Tried to turn, but his body would not obey. He fell to his knees among the dead. "Who are you?" he asked. His voice came out as a whisper. "I have many names. Your species called me Ares once. Mars, the red god, the lord of battles, but those are just words. What I am is something older than names." The world around seemed to fade. The bodies disappeared. The broken walls vanished. He found himself standing in an endless dark space lit by distant fires. Before him stood a figure. The figure was not human. It was not or any species had ever seen. It was something that existed beyond physical form. It looked like a man made of red light and shadows, with eyes that burned like dying stars. "I have watched you, little human," the figure said. "I have watched many warriors across many worlds, but few have interested me like you do." Tried to stand straight, but he was too weak. "What do you want?" "I want to offer you a gift, or perhaps a curse. It depends on how you choose to see it." The figure moved closer. Its presence was overwhelming, felt like an ant standing before a mountain. "You have the heart of a warrior," the figure said. "True warriors are rare. Most who fight do so because they must, because they are ordered to, because they have no choice. But you fight because it is what you are. It is written in your soul." "I fight because there are people who need protecting," said. The figure laughed. It was not a cruel laugh, it was almost approving. "Yes, that is what makes you special. You fight not for glory or revenge. You fight for others. That kind of spirit is precious. It should not be wasted." The figure extended a hand toward. In its palm was something that looked like a flame, but it was not hot. It was cold, cold as death. "Take my power," the figure said. "Become my champion, my avatar in the physical world. I will give you strength beyond anything you can imagine. You will become war itself. No enemy will be able to stand against you." Stared at the flame. He could feel its power calling to him. It promised everything he had ever wanted. The strength to protect. The power to never lose anyone again. "What is the price?" he asked. "Your service, eternal. When your mortal body dies, your spirit will fight in my realm forever. You will never rest. You will never know peace. You will be war until the end of time itself." Was silent for a long moment. He thought about his family, dead in the war. He thought about his home, destroyed. He thought about all the soldiers who had died around him. He thought about, standing at a window, looking out at stars she thought she would never see him under again. "If I accept," he said slowly, "will I have the power to end this war, to protect the people I care about?" "You will have the power to end any war, to protect anyone you choose, but remember, little human, power always comes with a price, and war never truly ends." Looked at the flame. He looked at the figure's burning eyes. He thought about everything he had lost and everything he still had to lose. Then he reached out and took the flame. Pain exploded through his body. It was like being burned alive from the inside. Every cell, every atom was being torn apart and rebuilt. He screamed, but no sound came out. The figure watched with ancient eyes. "It is done," it said. "Rise now, champion. Rise and show the galaxy what war truly looks like." Opened his eyes. He was back on the battlefield, surrounded by dead, but everything was different now. He could see things he had never seen before. The flow of energy through the air, the heartbeats of distant enemies, the fear radiating from the ships above. He looked at his hands. They were glowing with a faint red light. Power surged through him like electricity. His wounds were healing before his eyes. The exhaustion that had almost killed him was gone, replaced by strength unlike anything he had ever felt. He stood up. A group appeared at the breach, ready to continue the attack. They stopped when they saw him. Even without eyes, they could see that something had changed. Smiled. It was not a friendly smile. He moved so fast that they did not see him coming. One moment he was standing still. The next, he was among them, his hands tearing through their scales like paper. They tried to fight back. They tried to run. It did not matter. Was no longer human. Not fully. He was something else now. Something that existed to fight, to destroy, to win. When the last fell, he turned and looked at the ships hovering above. They were starting to retreat, pulling back from the moon. Crouched down, power gathered in his legs. He jumped. He flew upward like a rocket, leaving a trail of red light behind him. He hit the nearest ship like a meteor, punching straight through its hull. He tore through the ship from end to end, killing everything inside. Then he jumped to the next ship, and the next. The soldiers on the ground watched in shock and fear. They had never seen anything like this. A single figure, blazing like a star, destroying an entire fleet by himself. When the last ship fell from the sky in flames, landed back on the moon, he stood in the center of the base, surrounded by burning wreckage and stunned soldiers. The battle was over. They had won. stood silent for a moment, feeling the new power that lived inside him. It was hungry. It wanted more. More battles, more enemies, more war. He pushed the hunger down. He was still himself. He was still. The power was a tool, not a master. But even as he thought this, a small voice in the back of his mind whispered that tools could become masters if you were not careful. An officer approached him slowly. The officer's face was a mixture of awe and terror. "What are you?" the officer asked. Looked at his glowing hands. He looked at the destruction around him. He looked at the stars above where the ships had fallen. "I do not know," he said honestly, "but I think I am going to find out." Somewhere in the space between spaces, the ancient figure that called itself a god of war smiled. Its champion had awakened, and the galaxy would never be the same. News of what happened on spread across the galaxy like fire through dry grass. A human had destroyed an entire fleet, alone, with his bare hands. Some called it a lie, a story made up to boost morale, but there were recordings. Hundreds of soldiers had seen it with their own eyes. The footage showed a glowing figure tearing through ships like they were made of paper. They did not know what to think. Humans were supposed to be weak, fragile, short-lived creatures barely worth noticing. But this human had done something that their greatest warriors could not. Emperor demanded that return to the capital immediately. The order came with a full military escort. Did not resist. He understood why they were afraid. He was afraid too. The power inside him had not faded after the battle. If anything, it had grown stronger. He could feel it constantly, like a second heartbeat. It whispered to him in quiet moments. It showed him visions of battles that had happened thousands of years ago. It taught him things about war that no living creature should know. He was changing. Every day he felt less human and more like something else. The journey back to the capital took 5 days. Spent most of that time alone in his quarters, trying to understand what he had become. He practiced controlling the power. He learned to hide the glow in his hands. He learned to quiet the whispers in his mind. He learned to look human even when he was not. But he could not hide forever. The power wanted to be used. It was patient, but it would not wait forever. When the ship landed at the capital, was waiting on the platform. She looked different from how remembered. There were dark circles under her eyes. Her usually perfect posture was slightly bent, like she was carrying a weight no one could see. When she saw him step off the ship, her expression changed. It cycled through surprise, then relief, then something harder to name. She walked toward him. The guards around her tried to stop her, but she pushed past them. "You are alive," she said. "I am. The reports said you destroyed a fleet by yourself. They said you were glowing like a star." Nodded. "The reports are true." Stared at him for a long moment. Her silver and gold eyes searched his face for something. "You are different," she said finally. "I can feel it. There is something inside you that was not there before." "Yes." "What happened to you?" Was silent. How could he explain? How could anyone understand? "Something found me on the battlefield," he said slowly. "Something old. It offered me power and I took it. Now I am something between human and something else." His face went pale. The old stories speak of such things, spirits that grant power to warriors. My people called them the Burning Ones. They were supposed to be myths. They are not myths. Reached out and touched his hand. Her fingers were cold against his skin. "You are warm," she said, "warmer than before, like there is a fire inside you." "There is." She pulled her hand back. For the first time since had met her, she looked uncertain. "The council is afraid of you," she said. "My father is afraid. They do not know what you are or what you might do." "I am not going to hurt anyone. I only want to end this war." "Can you end it?" Thought about the power inside him. He thought about what he had done on. He thought about what he could do if he truly let go. "Yes," he said, "I can." The meeting with Emperor was tense. stood in the center of the throne room, surrounded by guards who kept their weapons pointed at him. The emperor sat on his throne, watching with those cold silver eyes. "Show me," the emperor said, "show me what you have become." Hesitated. Then he let go of the control he had been holding so tightly. The glow returned to his hands. It spread up his arms across his chest until his entire body was lit with red light. The air around him grew hot. The guards stepped back in fear. But he did not attack. He did not move. He simply stood there letting them see. After a moment he pulled the power back. The glow faded. He was just a man again. A man standing in an alien throne room waiting to be judged. The emperor was silent for a long time. "You could kill everyone in this room," he said finally. "You could probably kill everyone in this city. Why do you not?" "Because they are not my enemies," said. "They are my enemies. I only want to fight them. And after they are defeated, what then? Then I will find peace, somehow." The emperor studied him. Something shifted in his ancient eyes. Not trust exactly, but perhaps understanding. "Very well," the emperor said. "You will lead our fleet against the. You will be given command of our best ships and our finest soldiers. End this war, human, and prove that I was not wrong to let you live." The war entered a new phase. Led the fleet into territory. What had been a defensive war became an offensive one. They were not prepared for what came for them. In every battle was at the front. He did not hide in a command ship like other leaders. He flew into combat himself, blazing with red light. They tried everything. They sent their strongest warriors against him. He killed them. They laid traps with thousands of soldiers. He walked through them. They attacked from ambush. He sensed them before they could strike. Nothing worked. Word spread among them. They began to call him something in their language. It translated roughly to the death that walks. They told stories of a demon that had been summoned by a creature that could not be killed, a monster that fed on war. They were not entirely wrong. Each battle fed the power inside. Each victory made him stronger. The whispers in his mind grew louder. The visions grew more vivid. He began to see things that had not happened yet, glimpses of future battles, hints of what was to come. The god of war was teaching him, preparing him for something greater. But with the power came cost. Found it harder and harder to sleep. When he did sleep, he dreamed of endless battlefields. He dreamed of fighting forever, never resting, never stopping. He woke up exhausted even when his body felt strong. He found it harder to connect with others. The soldiers respected him now. They followed his orders without question, but they were also afraid of him. He could see it in their eyes. He was becoming isolated, alone with the power and the whispers and the endless hunger for war. Then came to him. She appeared on his command ship one day without warning. She walked onto the bridge like she owned it, which technically she did. She was still a princess, after all. "You look terrible," she said. Almost laughed. He was standing in front of a tactical display, planning their next attack. His uniform was perfect. His body was stronger than ever, but she could see through all of that. "I have not been sleeping well," he admitted. "No, it is more than that. The power is eating you from the inside." Was silent, she was not wrong. Walked closer. She stood beside him, looking at the display of enemy positions and fleet movements. "My people have stories about warriors who gained power from the old spirits," she said. "They always ended the same way. The warrior won their battles, they defeated their enemies, and then the power consumed them. They forgot who they were. They became weapons and nothing more. I know the risk." "Do you? Because from where I stand, you look like a man who is losing himself." Turned to face her. Up close he could see the concern in her eyes. Real concern, not the cold distance she had shown him before. "Why do you care?" he asked. Was quiet for a moment. Then she did something unexpected. She reached out and took his hand. "Because you are my husband," she said. "I know our marriage was politics. I know I treated you badly. But you went to war for my people. You risked everything. You are giving yourself to this power so that we can be safe. That deserves respect. That deserves care." Felt something crack inside him. A wall he had built around himself began to break. "I'm not doing this for respect," he said. "I know, that is why you deserve it." She squeezed his hand. "Win this war," she said. "Defeat the and then come home to me." Looked at her. For the first time, he saw her not as an alien princess who despised him. He saw her as someone who was trying, in her own way, to reach across the distance between them. "Is that what you want?" he asked. "I do not know yet, but I would like the chance to find out." She released his hand and stepped back. "Do not let the power consume you. You are more than a weapon. Remember that." She left the bridge. Stood there for a long time, feeling the warmth where her hand had touched his. The whispers in his mind went quiet for the first time in weeks. He smiled. Then he turned back to the tactical display and began planning the final battle that would end the war. There would fall, and he would come home. The final battle took place above the. Had spent weeks preparing. He had studied every piece of information about defenses. He had planned for every possibility. He had gathered the largest fleet the Empire had ever assembled. But in the end, the final battle came down to him. They had one last weapon. Deep beneath their world, they had built a device that could destroy entire planets. It was their final answer to defeat. If they could not win, they would take their enemies with them. Sensed the device activating. The god of war inside him could feel the energy gathering, like a storm about to break. He did not hesitate. He flew down to the planet's surface alone. His body blazed with red light as he tore through the atmosphere. Ships tried to stop him. He destroyed them without slowing down. The device was buried deep underground in a fortress made of black stone. Thousands of warriors guarded it. They had been told to hold at any cost. They could not hold. Crashed into the fortress like a falling star. He moved through the corridors in a blur of red light and death. They threw everything they had at him. Soldiers, weapons, traps that would have killed anything else. He walked through them all. When he reached the device, it was already counting down. He had less than a minute. The god of war spoke in his mind. "You can stop it, but it will require everything you have." Understood. To stop an explosion that could destroy a planet, he would have to absorb it himself. The power would either kill him or change him forever. He did not hesitate. He placed his hands on the device. He opened himself to the power inside him and let it flow outward. The explosion came. Energy beyond anything had ever felt slammed into him. It was like trying to hold back an ocean with his bare hands. His body screamed in agony. His mind fractured into 1,000 pieces. But he held on. He pushed back against the explosion. He took the energy into himself. He refused to let it go. The seconds felt like years. The pain was beyond description. But slowly, impossibly, the explosion began to fade. When it was over, collapsed. The fleet found him 3 hours later. He was lying in the ruins of the fortress, surrounded by dead and melted stone. He was not glowing anymore. He looked almost human again. But he was alive. The war was over. Recovery took months. Spent most of that time in a medical facility on the. His body healed quickly thanks to the power inside him, but his mind needed more time. The explosion had changed him again. The god of war was still there, but it was quieter now, more distant, like it was satisfied and had decided to rest. Could still feel the power when he needed it, but it no longer demanded constant attention. It no longer whispered endlessly in his mind. He was still something more than human, but he was also still himself. Visited him every day. At first she came out of duty. She was his wife. It was expected. But as the days passed, something changed. They talked, really talked, about their lives, their fears, their hopes, told her about Earth and his family and everything he had lost, told him about growing up as a princess, always watched, always judged, never allowed to be herself. They were not so different, they discovered. Both of them had been shaped by forces beyond their control. Both of them had learned to hide their true selves behind masks. One day, about 2 months after the final battle, asked him a question. "What will you do now?" Looked at her. She was sitting by his bed, as she did every day. The cold distance she had shown him when they first met was completely gone. In its place was something warm and uncertain and new. "I do not know," he admitted. "I never expected to survive." "You could return to Earth. You have done more than enough for our treaty. No one would blame you." Thought about Earth. It had been years since he had seen blue skies and green trees. Years since he had breathed air that did not come from a machine. But Earth was also empty. His family was gone. His home was destroyed. There was nothing waiting for him there. "I could," he said slowly, "but I am not sure I want to." Looked away. Her hands were folded in her lap and noticed they were shaking slightly. "I have something to tell you," she said. "I have been thinking about it for weeks, and I do not know how to say it." "Then just say it." She took a deep breath. "When we were married, I hated you. Not you specifically, but what you represented. A human. A weak creature I was forced to bond with for political reasons. I thought you would be dead within a year." She finally looked at him. "I was wrong. About everything. You are the strongest person I have ever met, not because of the power you carry, but because of who you are underneath it. You faced hatred and fear and impossible odds, and you never gave up. You never became cruel or bitter. You stayed good even when the galaxy gave you every reason to be bad." Her voice cracked slightly. "I do not deserve you, I know that, but I want the chance to try. I want to be a real wife to you, not a political arrangement. Not an obligation, something real." Was silent for a long moment. He had dreamed of this. In the quiet moments between battles, when the loneliness felt like it would crush him, he had dreamed of someone seeing him for who he really was. "Are you sure?" he asked. "I am not human anymore, not completely. The power inside me will never go away. I will live longer than any normal human. I will be different for the rest of my life. I know. It will not be easy. Your people still fear me. Many of them still hate humans. Our marriage will always be complicated." "I know that too." Reached out and took his hand. Her fingers were cool against his skin, but there was warmth in her touch. "I do not want easy," she said. "I want real, and you are the most real thing I have ever known." Smiled. It was the first genuine smile he had felt in a long time. "Then we will figure it out together," he said. The ceremony was held a year later. Not the political marriage they had been forced into, a real one, a bonding ceremony that meant something. The entire empire watched as Princess and the human who had saved them pledged themselves to each other, not out of obligation, out of choice. Emperor performed the ceremony himself. He looked at with respect now, not fear, not contempt, respect for the man who had ended a war that might have destroyed them all. "You saved my people," the emperor said quietly before the ceremony began. "You saved my daughter. I will never forget that." "I did what anyone would do," said. "No, you did what only you could do. That is why my daughter chose you. And that is why I welcome you into my family, not as a political tool, as a son." The ceremony was beautiful. Floating lights filled the great temple. Music that sounded like nothing on earth played softly. Wore a dress of white and silver that seemed to glow with its own light. When they exchanged vows, felt the god of war stir inside him, but it was not demanding attention. It was almost like it was watching, approving. "We are bound now," said, repeating the same words she had spoken at their first wedding. until death breaks the chain. But this time her voice was warm. This time her eyes were filled with love. Pulled her close and kissed her. It was their first real kiss. It tasted like starlight and promises. The crowd cheered. That night they stood together on a balcony overlooking the alien city. The stars stretched above them, infinite and beautiful. "Do you ever wonder what would have happened if things were different?" asked. "If you had not been forced into this marriage?" "Thought about it." "Sometimes," he said, "but I think I ended up where I was supposed to be. Even with all the pain, all the fighting, all the things you lost. Especially because of those things, they made me who I am, and who I am led me to you." Leaned against him. He wrapped an arm around her and pulled her close. "You know," she said, "when we first met I called you weak and fragile. I thought humans were nothing special. And now I know the truth. Humans are the most terrifying species in the galaxy, not because of power or technology, but because you never give up. You take the worst the universe throws at you and you turn it into strength. You fall down 100 times and get up 101. She looked up at him. "You became a god of war, but you did not let it consume you. You stayed human inside. That is more impressive than any power." Smiled down at her. "I had something worth staying human for," he said. They stood there together as the stars wheeled overhead. Two people from different worlds, different species, different lives, brought together by politics and obligation. Bound together by choice and love. The god of war still lived inside, it always would, but it was quiet now. Content. It had found a champion worthy of its power. And that champion had found something worth more than all the power in the universe. He had found home,